lounging, son.
Welcome back to the Comic Lounge. My name's Ryan, and with me today I have another awesome, dope indie cartoonist. I got Ben Granoff with me. We're going to talk comics. He does a podcast, and my boy Eli, the Grendel podcast that everybody's mentioned before to me to talk about. But I got to read the books before I listen to you guys talk about the books. So welcome, dude.
Thanks, man. It's nice to be here. Thanks for talking to all the Fabers, and we all like the paintings in your background. And you have a good channel, and in the spirit of positivity and it all being comics, I think you're doing a good job.
Well, thank you, man. That means a lot, dude. It's always nice to get compliments from people that aren't my brother or or my family, that kind of have no choice. They have to tell me they like it, even if they don't fucking like it or understand it. So thank you for the compliments.
You're welcome.
Let's start off I'm sure you already know. I always ask everybody, especially the first time I'm talking to them, how their love for comics started, some influences, and what made you want to be a cartoonist yourself.
I had a pretty even exposure to a few different tribes of comics from a young age. Mm-hmm. Started with the Sunday funnies on my dad's lap before I could read. Calvin and Hobbes, Robot Man, Shoe, Pogo, Garfield, that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. Equal smattering of the superheroes. Started becoming a Marvel kid with trading cards when I was 8 and books when I was about 10. And classic American comic strips. I got this book, The Great American Comic Strip. Winsor McKay, George Harriman, on down, all that classic stuff. And then also there was alternative stuff in there. So I saw Crumb for the first time when I was a little kid and all that stuff. But I think the big one that I always talk about is that my parents had a copy of Mouse on the bookshelf, and I encountered it when I was 4 years old for the first time. And, not knowing what the subject matter, I didn't learn about what the show was and my connection to it until I was 8, 9, 10 years old. My mother's parents were Holocaust survivors. So, we had this book, and they weren't like comics people, but if you tell my mom in 1985 that there's a Pulitzer Prize winning, book about that experience about mothers and parents, she'll buy it. And so I talk a lot about reading the pictures and, comics, when people say comics are a visual medium primarily, and, do you prefer the writing is good or the art is good? Well, the storytelling is a whole other component of that, and your ability to suss out the meaning and the pacing and the author's intent through the pictures is what I've always responded to. And that's, Spiegelman hit me as a little kid for that reason. And the atrocities and all this, the heavy-handed stuff aside, you could just, not knowing what it was about, I could tell what the vibe and pace of the story was.
Yeah, Mouse is a heavy subject matter for sure. I mean, I never met her. I think she would have been my great grandma's sister. They were sisters, and my great grandma one of my great grandmas that I never met, she survived. Her sister didn't make it out. So that, the Holocaust and all that stuff has always been a very heavy subject within our family.
Sure.
Obviously as the generations go down, it's not talked about maybe as much, but yeah, I mean, think about
and the way it affected comics, not to just to steer to something better. It's all, if we have comics, we can celebrate any matter of intergenerational trauma,
right. Yeah.
With the joy and beauty of this medium. People confuse the medium with the genre.
Yeah.
And that's frustrating, and we just have to be, we just have to expect it and roll with that punch. People say that the comics is a medium. Ryan, what I'm saying is it could be a large if we let it be.
And that's just, it's funny because I want to mention that is that I hate when people because I have friends too, right? They just, comics for kids. They don't really understand the magnitude of what comic books are and can be, like the different subject matters that are touched on. It's not just fucking superheroes, which I love superhero stuff too. But like when my buddy just teases me, I'm like, dude, you don't fucking even understand what comics are. I'm like, have you seen that movie? Oh yeah, it's good. I'm like, yeah, that was a fucking comic book, you moron. You know what I mean? Like, they're not all superhero stories. Like, I've read some of the most, I mean, some of the best literature has been a graphic novel form in terms of what I've read. So I think that I just love seeing the medium push forward constantly, and that's why I like having the channel too. Is because I can touch on many different types of books, and like I can have something about Batman or Thor, but then I can also talk about a book by Chester Brown, or I can talk about Art Spiegelman, which is a book that I'm going to be talking about soon on the channel. So I think,
and for old men like us, there's a generation and a half of people that have risen up, and what they're doing, what the young kids are doing, is a whole other thing. It's all comics, and the more it cross pollinates, the more different kinds of comics we have. I struggle to find like art comics that I really enjoy, because a big part of the trip for me is having that Will Eisner, Citizen Kane type of experience where it's really immersive and I feel like an editor and I'm bringing the story to life in my imagination. And that's sort of more challenging to do with like minimal art driven comics. I feel like one day I'll get into them. It's all comics though. So it doesn't, like I know you want to make comics, so make comics. Like,
yeah,
there's no rules. When I saw who's the Facebook muralist, David Cho. When I saw David Cho's the like passion that he put into the idea that like you can do whatever the fuck you want to do, that to be an artist you find the gestures that you want to make and you make them, that really resonated with me.
Yeah, that David Cho interview was,
he's an intense guy,
one of my favorite interviews.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, and
he's a great Joe Rogan guest as well.
I mean, that dude, he's just insane. And like it's crazy too, because like he hadn't done comics in fucking what, I don't even know how long. And then all
years,
all of a sudden he has a fucking Superman cover.
Oh, I didn't know about that.
Yeah, he did a cover for Superman Red and Blue. And he's doing
cool.
Batman cover. And this, I'm telling you, it's like I don't even know how it happened.
Because I don't know how they can afford him. Or maybe says, you can just pay me whatever. It's just fun to do.
Here, I'll yeah, like that's what it felt like. Because like it didn't look like any other cover. Like it was probably one of the best covers DC or Marvel has put out in I don't even know how long. Like it was just very experimental. It was unlike anything else. But yeah,
this is what I like about retailers, is that your enthusiasm for the whole, smorgasbord.
Yeah, I mean,
great. I can't. I've never been someone that could read that many comics. I don't have the time to read comics, and I read them very slow.
I shouldn't have the time.
Yeah, right.
I mean, to be honest with you, I don't know how I have the time to read as much as I do. Like, I think I've read, the books come out today as the day we're recording, right? I've read 20 of the comic books that are being released today already. Now I
can't do that.
I get my books on Monday, so that helps. Or
I
get them on Monday, so that helps.
But Wednesday is not the pinnacle of what comics can be, even though they're positioned that way.
Yeah, I love being able to turn people on to stuff, recommend stuff to people, and then when they come back and they're like, dude, I love that book. That was dope. What else you got for me? Like that is like one of the greatest gifts of working in a shop. And I mean, also the channel, sometimes people will message me or they'll comment, oh man, I really dug your take on the book. Like you're making me want to go pick it up. That also is like very gratifying to me. But yeah, there's just so much, there's so much stuff, and trying to pick out the good from, I hate to say it, but the crap, because there is a lot of like, in my opinion, filler of terms of stuff that like, especially Marvel and DC. I don't want to say like the indie stuff, but Marvel and DC, like they just pump out so much, right? And like, but then you get a Daniel Warren Johnson Beta Ray Bill book,
Sure. But I wouldn't know. I don't know anything about what goes on in the big two anymore. I know, I pay attention when Daniel Warren Johnson or
Right.
David Aha or who's whoever the young guns that middle-aged young guns who I enjoy.
Yeah.
But that's it. So I don't really, I can look at the pictures. If the pictures are appealing and the
Yeah.
storytelling is doing things that are innovative, then the book's worth your time. The rest is all
Agreed.
commentary. Like the dialogue, like if you don't like the dialogue, rewrite the dialogue using your imagination. I don't know what to tell you. Like it's all about the pictures. So
Yeah. I mean,
deal.
that's the thing that like I don't think it should ever be driven one way or the other by just for a while it was the writer, right? That was driving comic books. I think in the early 2000s, to where like there was so much text on the page that the art wasn't given the room to breathe, and then as opposed to the 90s where it was very artist driven. I think it needs to be the perfect marriage of both. I mean, for me,
Yeah, and I agree. And I think that a big part of that is making sure that the text is composed specifically to the images so that
correct.
the lettering and the art can interact with each other as much as possible.
Yeah. Yeah. It's sometimes, dude,
And what that might mean is that, in a more perfect world, lettering gets done earlier in the process.
but enough about that. I want to talk about some of your stuff. So,
I'd be happy to.
what made you decide to become a cartoonist yourself, man? I mean, I do have Oh Fuck Why. I have that book with me, but before we talk about the book, I want to know how you got into cartooning.
I like the idea that you can isolate moments and then juxtapose them in interesting ways. I like being able to draw pictures that are funny and fast. My ideal pace of work is to finish multiple pages in a day, but that doesn't, I can't get paid to do that. But when I'm having my most fun making comics, I'm turning out 2 to 5 pages of something in a day, and it could be loose and colored and highlighter, and not like drafted to hell, or I've always loved the cartoon image. I saw a bunch of different kinds of comics when I was a kid. Had some amazing experiences as a college student. Learned how to make comics from people who were doing it. And it's not a product, it's an art form. I'm really happy to be able to like keep the roof over my family's head with comics for now, for as long as that lasts. That's like all the other big goals are all sort of relative to that. So like the only goal that's like is like Hollywood, baby, like superstardom. Everything else is in the same level of stratosphere as being able to make the nut doing comics. I'm very happy. I love doing comics. I've always done something related to comics and art or working with my community. That's like the story of my career.
I mean, that's awesome, dude. I mean, I think I've often said it. I don't know if I've ever said it on the channel, but like, I've like with the channel, or if I were to do a comic, like my goal is not to be a fucking millionaire. It would be just to be able to make a living doing that, as opposed to working like the 2 jobs that I'm working now on top of having the channel. It's because doing something you love, it's not work then. It's just something that, like, to be able to make a living from your passion, I think is huge. And not everybody can do that. Like, I mean, there's fucking billions of people on this planet, and a large percentage of that are people that just wake up, go to work, to a job that they don't necessarily love, and then they come home and then repeat every single day.
But there's people that are able to do that who might
Yeah.
not be as good at drawing or whatever the hell it is artistically as the people that are struggling. So there's all these other factors, creative and social and professional and otherwise, that go into that.
Right. Can you talk about like, this is the only book I have of yours, but
yeah, sure.
What were some of the other stuff that you kind of started? What was some of the first comics that you publish, and when were you able to make that switch from, or just focusing on that in terms of like your source of income and stuff like that?
Yeah, I started. I mean, I started making comics when I was a kid.
Right, right.
I didn't get as many pages under my belt before college as I should have. I did, I did maybe 100, 150 pages. Not focused. When the spirit would move me, I would do 5, 10, 20, 30 page stories. And that would happen every once in a while. And when I would get into, I would do ones that were painted. I would do ones that were blah, 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 blah. And I started self-publishing comics I started getting credits in comics. I was a Marvel intern, so I have one more. My first credit is a Marvel credit, which is fucking cool.
That's pretty dope. Yeah.
Yeah, and then I started getting like indie credits while I was still in school, and I self-published my first book, like just before I graduated. That's this one. This is my thesis. No cover. Tip to self: always draw cover. I was just like over it at that point. But there's a Dark Knight Returns so much. So this is the Kinkos. This is my first self-published like Kinkos, playing with the drawers and shit. And then
I want to get that from you for sure.
Yeah, and then this is the this is like the nice edition. So I did that, and self-publishing and getting work published here and there in small and medium-sized magazines, and I got out of school and like took dead end jobs and tried to learn how to freelance.
Mm-hmm.
And within 2 years, I was freelancing full time. And that lasted for about 2 years. I took 3 years off to pursue like more education, career type stuff. It just like slowed down too many times. And I was like, I don't know if this is progressing.
Mm-hmm.
And then since 2013, I've only been doing art and teaching and comics stuff, which has been great. It's made me very happy, very, very fulfilling to get to do that.
Oh yeah, dude, that's fucking dope. Are those early books, are those available to
I have a few copies left. I feel like I have a CD-ROM with the files on it somewhere. I should make something. Yeah, it's crazy because there's like outlaw type shit in this book.
I love that lettering on the second one. It looks like graffiti on the cover.
Yeah, it's graffiti. It's it's a
That's dope. That's fucking awesome, dude. I love it. I mean, that's a fucking awesome.
Yeah, graffiti had a big impact on me. Von Bodie had a big impact on me. The graffiti starts with me with Von Bodie. So all those letter forms that the 80s subway writers and characters did, it's, if you borrow from someone great,
Yeah, fuck yeah. I mean, hip hop and graffiti and comics are like, and I love all that stuff. I love all of the whole hip hop culture. Like hip hop is like always been huge for me. My buddy Dylan and I, that does the weekly reads with me, and where we go through graphic novels and stuff. Like that's how
you guys are rappers.
He raps. I don't. I'm not gonna fucking sit there and try to fucking do that. But that's how we bonded. Like in high school. That I think that's when I started like kind of coming out of my shell, was because I was shyer, I think, when I was younger. And
you're a comic book nerd, so we're on for me.
Yeah, it's true. But the hip hop thing, like I saw him drawing, and then he was listening to music. I was like, "What are you listening to?" And then like that's how our friendship started. We've been friends for like, long time.
Yeah.
Like almost probably like 18 years. Yeah, that's why that cover like just stood out to me, because I love the lettering. I loved because he would fucking tag and shit on the art too. Like,
well, this book is very bad. I wrote it when I was 19. It is it's a festival of cringe, but it's a 50-page early work.
No, I mean I would love to be able to check it out, dude. Because I mean,
I'll see if I can get a digital copy together. I have but few copies left.
Well, I'll buy one if you have any.
Yeah, sure.
But so let's talk. Oh fuck, why the latest?
Oh fuck, why?
It's
oh fuck, why? Because there's a question mark and exclamation point in the title.
Okay, I didn't want to yell at you. I didn't want to yell at you, but I'll let you yell at me.
Oh fuck, why?
I love the fucking book.
Thanks, man.
It was really dope. The art, the writing, everything's cool. What really stood out though is a shared universe podcast. So Mike Zapsik from comic book men fame, like me
Yeah.
and all that stuff, and then it's also you got the Cosmic Lion Productions on the back, the boy Eli Schwab. So he talked a little bit about this book and the involvement of Mike on the book as well. I was kind of
Sure,
curious.
yeah. The book is the brainchild pipe dream of two longtime best friends, Brendan Sokler and Blake Maloof. They're both creative professionals in other fields: acting, film production, video game design. And I feel like when they were like in their mid-20s, they had this wonderful pipe dream about what if four idiots got radioactive superpowers based on their drugs of choice,
Yeah.
and in order to power up those powers to save the universe, they'd have to be extra high on those stimulants. So they're really bad at being superheroes. So that it was their like pet project. These like two best friends who go back to like middle school, and through a decade-long networking story, I got hooked up with them, and Brendan Sokler is a guy who has a lot of like production fingers around different things. He does like ring announcing and emceeing for wrestling and MMA and all kinds of acting and production and podcasting, and happened to do a podcast, be like a recurring guest on some shared universe project. I don't know that much. Like I grew up on Kevin Smith stuff, but like I'm not like I haven't really caught up like a diehard for the last I'm a fan.
Yeah.
Snooze.
Yeah.
So yeah, so that's it's sort of like it's like a Stan Lee presents kind of
Deal, yeah.
like position. And then these guys they don't know about like comics nuts and bolts inside baseball publishing, all that stuff, and they wanted me to find the best. So that was Eli. Obviously it was Eli because Eli is committed to like production innovation, variety of content, like good comics, formal interesting stuff, and creator rights. Those like Eli's the turtle guy, so like if you bring your creator owned book to him, like it's yours, obviously.
Yeah.
And that was just like it was just like the path of least resistance, and it was just like a guy who like, he and I are very simpatico in terms of just like general creative vision, and he never says no to me. It works out quite well. So I'm in the middle of inking the second issue. Third one's being written. Ron Mars has been brought on as like a writing consultant and editor for my guys, so that's interesting.
Ron Mars.
Yeah, I think they took like
Okay.
his writing class and like cozied up, and they're like, well, we do this book and we could use your help. He said, okay. So I don't know. So
Okay.
anyway, I plan on working on this for a while. I just have to do it fast enough, which I have been, which is great. It's been gestating for quite some time, ins and outs, ups and downs, health and this and that, and life and all that. But but I think, for the last 2 or 3 months, I've been laser focused. I think I penciled the whole thing in a month, and I inked 15 pages in May, and I'm shooting for another 15. All my comics are 30 pages because my shit is so decompressed that I need the extra page count in order to accomplish anything.
I'm not mad at that. I love exercise page books.
Yeah.
I hate how I feel. Like I go back and read old stuff, and then you read new stuff, right? And you see how the page count just keeps lowering and lowering. Yeah. Like it used to be, like old stuff used to be almost, I think, 28 pages a story, and now it's sometimes whittled down to 20. which is very frustrating, especially since the price just keeps going up. But like I said, I really dug the book. I don't know if it's available yet, right? I know Eli sent me an early.
Right. You have an edition of 30. So that wasn't saying the inside front cover in the signature space. It says this book is worth a lot of money, and that money belongs to Ryan. A rich man. Congratulations.
Thank you, thank you.
Yeah,
Now I can put my kid through college with this book. So
well, some kind of college, yeah.
yeah, some kind.
Yeah, I think we're gonna get like a first arc in the can before releasing it monthly.
Oh, cool.
I just bragged about how fast I am, but I'm not really that fast. And there's a lot of moving parts, and there's a lot of like writing revision where I go in and give my obnoxious notes, and then presumably Ron Mars tells them I'm either a genius or a moron, and then we do a few rounds back and forth. And one of the things in my process when I'm working with clients is that I'm very layout focused in the beginning. I believe that if you want to write comics, you must draw layouts. Must. It's just like, otherwise it should just be Marvel method. Because if you're a writer and you're just giving me a list of panels and they can be arranged any way I want, like maybe they should be arranged the way you want. I'm not talking about my clients. I'm just bitching about the assembly line in general and my general disdain for comic book writers. But I do think that you should be able to, when they say comics is a visual medium, that's not necessarily about, the way, all the forearm muscles in the sinew are articulated by, fine Hunt 101 hatching. It's about how the moments tell the story, Like if I pick up a book and I can't tell, it's all talking heads and a bunch of dialogue and like there's nothing moving around. It's just a comic about boring images, I look at Jesse Longeran, is that his name? He did Hedra. Who's that guy?
Oh man, I can't.
He's sick. Anyway, he's sick.
What you're talking about, yeah.
You look at his layouts and you're just like, oh, the meditation of comics is real. That's what turns me on. Anyway, so I do a lot of layouts just so that I can say, all right, I can say things like, this is what you've written, this is how we can tweak it, or these are the, if you tell me that the story is about X, but we don't have the following visual beats, we're not achieving that aim. And then what happens is I will get, I will hit a groove, or they will hit a sense of mutual trust, and the layouts sort of become preliminary pencils, so that by the time I'm ready to pencil, it's pretty tight. If I'm penciling properly, doing this like intense layout phase, most of my penciling work is done for me.
So you're telling me I need to draw layouts if I want to write?
I mean, I think that
I can't draw for shit though. So
yeah, but you don't need to draw. You get some of these.
Yeah.
Right. The thing about these is that this is what I tell my students when I teach storyboarding. The great thing about these is that they're modular, right? So you isolate every image into a bullet pointed sentence. And if any of them are redundant, you get rid of it. And you do a little Harvey Pekar stick figure. And that's it. Because, it's really important about like how you set up your tiers and your pacing and your panels and all that. You have a specific vision for like why you've got a 3, 1, 6, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Like, if that's specific to you, then you need to visually articulate that, other than expecting an overworked penciler to read your mind.
Right.
It must be nice to have someone reading your mind all the time, but the less mental gymnastics that they have to do to get closer to what you want, do a little stick figure layout.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that might be easier because I like that. There's a short story that I'm going to write in one of the kayfabe books that's being worked on.
For 63?
No. I was too late on that. For Darkest Image.
Oh yeah.
So I I mean, I'm gonna try to do three. Dylan's doing one with me, Ben Perkins, and then Ben Anthony. And
Oh, cool.
I
What a
have,
spread.
yeah, I have like the images in my head, but for me to like verbally articulate it, I feel like is almost going to be harder for me than to actually like draw it out or to do.
So here, right. So here's one way of thinking about that. Ask yourself, what is the primary narrative element in action here? What's the most important thing that we're looking at? And then what are the secondary or tertiary or background narrative elements? And how many of them can I fit into this moment before it becomes muddled or too busy or not focused on what it's supposed to be? So it's like, what's the most important thing? You know, and if you find that per page or even per story that you've got moments that are redundant, where the narrative isn't being moved forward by a new emotion, or narrative element, then you've either got moments that are undercooked or redundant.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I love this
Yeah,
stuff. This is my favorite thing to talk about. And listen, that's just one way to storytell, right? And that's just my basic B Steven Spielberg, like be direct approach. The great thing about this is that there's as many different kinds of comics as there are people making them. And it's just like all you have to do is be clear. Be clear be clear for as long as you need to be, so that when you pull out the stops, whew, it's exciting. That's why I do a lot of stuff on a very simple grid, so that when I pull out a device that is a special effect, the contrast is there. A meter has been set so that the contrast does stand out. Because if everything is, Sam Keith is the exception to this, because Sam Keith's like max layouts are all, gelatinous and mechanic, like H.R. Giger, the inside of his guts and stuff. He can get away with it because he's a genius. But like, set the meter with something recognizable and normal, so that when you get crazy, you get crazy. That's my thing with manga. All manga is terrible. No, my thing with manga is that it gets produced so quickly that there's a lot of like scenes that are treated in layout like they're action sequences, when it's people sitting around and talking about who they have crushes on. All kinds of diagonal lines and extreme close-ups and speed lines. Be direct. Be clear.
Okay.
Be thoughtful.
All right. Yeah. I mean, this is gonna be the first time I've written any kind of a comic, so I'm excited to do it. At the same time, kind of like, hopefully I don't fuck this up as well. Like
Give me a call. Yeah, give me a call.
Okay. All right. Cool.
Yeah.
So back to you.
Oh, my favorite topic. Yeah.
Yeah. So I know that you are a part of a lot of projects in the group. K5 Ringside Seats. I've talked to a lot of people about their involvement in projects. Image Grand Design was a really dope project that I know you're a part of. I know you're part of a lot of other ones. Let's talk about your experience with Image Grand Design, and I want to hear about all the other projects that you're involved with, because I've seen a lot of the images and fuck, they look dope. So I'm very excited to see what else you guys.
Image Grand Design was a wonderful low risk lab for trying new things. I worked on like 18 pages, 15, 16, 17, 18 pages of that book. Some of them I did soup to nuts, writing, art, coloring, lettering. And then a bunch of them I collaborated in different capacities, which is one of my favorite things to do. So I inked and colored Eli for a page. I had Ro Higishi ink 2 pages of mine. And then I have a best friend who I've been making comics with since the 2nd grade. I wrote a 3-page sequence that he did the art for, and then I lettered. So it was just like, with every segment, I could sort of purposefully change gears. And my guess is that there are pages in that book that you might not be aware of that I worked on. It was cool. it was a good experience. It's like behind me now because I'm working on all these other things. And then I'm working on the Weapon Ech project. That's the Barry Windsor Smith
Yes.
celebration study. Everyone killed it on that book. My pages are like the only. People said, "What should I do?" I said, "Just do a study. It can be unlettered pencils," and I'm the only one who did unlettered pencils. So, but that one's really cool. 1963. I'm working. I thought you were part of that. You're not a part of the 1963?
I'm gonna be assistant
Editorial
editor.
capacity?
Editorial. I
Yeah.
reached out to Will and I'm like, if you need any help, do anything.
Yeah. Will's fantastic.
Oh, I love Will. Yeah, he's
Yeah.
he's letting me help with Weapon F too. I did 4 different just like mini like interview, kind of like 7 minutes long,
Oh, cool.
just to kind of promote, and I'm going to drop one each week once the pre-orders go
That's
live.
great.
Yeah.
Thanks. So Weapon F, and then so for 1963, I am gonna pencil, letter, and color. Yeah. So Dove Torben, the artist that I mentioned, my friend of my collaborator for 30 years, basically, which is crazy. I'm not that old, but I've known this guy we've been making comics together for 30 years. He's gonna pencil that, and it's a story written by Douglas Wolk, which is basically I saw that he was involved, and I was like, oh man, I gotta sidle up to this guy. Do you know him? He's a
Know the name.
Yeah, his new book is called All the Marvels, and it's like a grand design of like 80,000 Marvel comics. Anyway, so we're working on that Marvel method, and it's the first time I've ever done that, and it was probably my favorite experience working with a writer I've ever had, because it was just like, here's what it's like I was talking about before. Here's what I'd like to happen on the page. You make that happen in the most direct, clearest way that comes to you first, instead of me just giving you, a list of 7 boxes that you got to draw, panels that you got to draw. You make those decisions about how to pace this thing out and how to be as clear as possible, and how not to be redundant. I loved it. It was one of my absolute favorite creative experiences. H% C is Will's anthology, and Oh Fuck Why gets serialized in black and white in that. And in the earlier issues, it featured a lot of comics by cartoonists who I was supporting as an art specialist. So people who had their first published paid work ever, ever, were in there. Maybe like a half a dozen, 8 different artists Will featured. People, disabled artists that I was working with. Amazing.
Yeah, it was a pretty dope book too. Are you going to be a part of the book that I mentioned, Darkest Image? You got any plans for that one, or are you busy?
I have a rejected I have a cutting room floor page of Image Grand Design. That was like, in Spawn #1, in Spawn #1, there, like, the 3rd page is just a wall of text of like different, like, the TV pundits talking. So I actually read that, and I was like, holy shit, this is a really elaborate and interesting backstory of Al Simmons. Like, there's a lot of crazy information in there. It's almost like the opening of Watchmen, where you can see like the timeline split. Like, Al Simmons was at the Reagan assassination attempt. He was Secret Service, and he saved Ronald Reagan's life from the Jodie Foster obsessed killer, or whatever it is. So I have a page of that. I don't have time. That's the thing.
Yeah.
Like, there's more and more and more of these stories, and the projects that I'm interested in being involved in, or in perhaps doing more shepherding on, are like Weapon F, where you don't need to spend hours and hours and hours doing creative negotiation with a group of 15 people. You can just set up project guidelines, and everyone goes on their own, and give them a deadline, and they turn in 1 to 5 pages. I pitched my next one to Eli earlier this week. I'd like I'd like for everyone to go through the script for V for Vendetta #2 that's floating around, and draw 1 to 5 pages that you enjoy. And they don't have to be consecutive; they could be random. And then I would have 200 pages of blah blah blah, and put them all in sequence. So like if like 7 people drew page 2, you'd have page 1, and then 7 different versions of page 2. And so those are the projects that I think sort of make the most sense for this fan stuff. But I've got to, the good problem that I have is I got too many. I got too much work to do. I got more work to do than I can do. Someone once said to me, "First you get good, like the first like pro guy who like gave me like social guidance.
Mhm.
First you get good, then you get fast." And I feel like I am continuously trying to do both, but I am better and faster than I was. I've also drawn like more comics in the last 18 months than I have in my entire life, like put together basically.
Okay, cool. I mean, is there any other comic projects besides what you mentioned that you're working on that you can talk about, or you want to?
Yeah, I'm toning Arcane, which is another Cosmic Line book. It's going to come out monthly. There's like 9 issues with line art already, 9 to 12 issues. So I'm toning Arcane. We're doing it in like I don't want to say a faux digital duotone style, but there is. If you saw my duotone work in Image Grand Design, it's similar to that. That should be launching. Oh man, should be launching late summer. We'll see what happens. But it's the first issue is almost wrapped up. I've toned the second issue. I have another book called that I'm 100 pages of pencils into for another client called Mystic Connecticut Gateway to Awesome. It's a all ages ensemble science fiction adventure story. It's like I'd like to think of it as like a middle grade graphic novel.
Okay.
I'm doing, and then there was Korea, which appears in Monkeys Fighting Robots.
Mhm.
That's my grandfather's autobiography about his service in the 50s. I do Grendel the Devil in Detail, the podcast. I think that's all my projects. Many are the projects.
Yeah, a lot of stuff you got going on, dude. And I'm excited to check out Arcane. Eli has mentioned it a couple times to me, so I'm excited to check that out. Like I said, I want to get caught up on Grendel so I can just blast through the Grendel podcast because I've listened to bits and pieces. I'm like, fuck, I'm just gonna ruin the book for myself. So I gotta stop.
Yeah.
Like it's kind of like with the kayfabe channel. Like if they're gonna talk about a book that I haven't read yet, I just wait. Like Monsters when they did the Barry Windsor Smith.
I had the same experience. Yeah.
I'm like, I can't.
And then I couldn't get into Monsters. I read 30 pages and I got depressed. So I gotta keep going, I guess.
I mean, it is a heavy book. I had to break it up into multiple chunks of reading to whereas normally I could probably have sat there over a day and read the whole book, but it's not a book that you can do that with.
These amazing like monoliths of the field who are kind of particular and sort of are very particular about how they do things. Sims, Steranko, Windsor Smith, whoever else. It's almost like, oh God, why don't you just change your working process a little bit and we get more comics from you?
Yeah.
Not meant to be.
Yeah.
We got to get more comics from us instead of giving Kentaro Miura a heart attack. We should be making our own comics.
I mean, and that's what I love about the group, and that's what I love about everybody that I've talked to from the group. You guys all put out some really dope stuff, and like, I've amassed such a large collection over the past year of stuff from people in the group, and all the awesome content you guys are producing, and that's why like I love being able to promote it, and I hope that I bring more eyes and more readers to your guys' stuff by doing what I do, because like I think it's some of the best comics I'm reading, far and above some of the stuff that comes out at the shop that I work at. So,
I think we all appreciate that. There's also something to be said for, when you have connections to people and you understand where they're coming from, their work then becomes easier to glom onto and to relate to and to understand what they're talking about.
Before I let you get out of here, I was wondering if you could kind of share some recs of stuff that you've read recently that you're really digging, that you think people should check out, and then after that, where we can find you online, where we can connect with you to get some of your stuff, and I'll drop the links below.
The thing is, I don't read new stuff. I just go back and look
Even
at
old stuff. Hey, I'm cool with the old.
Everyone, my favorite old publishers are Marvel's Epic line and Eclipse Comics. A little bit of First and Pacific, but Eclipse, I got into them about a year and a half ago, and I was just blown away by the level of quality and variety, and just Kat Ron Wood is a fantastic editor. Aztec Ace by Doug Mensch is an unbelievable Eclipse book. Plastic Forks by Ted McKeever from Epic. What a fucking book. That's the fucking book. Fafford and the Grey Mouser. The more buzz we can get for a black and white oversized edition of Fafford and the Grey Mouser, the happier I'll be. That's like, I don't buy comics anymore. Like, I don't, I just like, I don't know, Tale of One Bad Rat, Luther Arkwright. Damn, I'm on that Brian Talbot kick. Tip kick. I don't know. There's too many comics, and I'm not an arbiter of good taste. I like stuff that's clear and appealing and innovative. And if you can give me those things, I don't care what the story is about. I'll read anything that lets my imagination bring a story to life in an interesting way. That's what I like.
Awesome, dude. All right. Well, like I said, before we get out of here, can you just share where we can find you online?
Oh yeah, my socials. Yeah,
Your socials.
my Instagram is my name, Ben Granoff.
Okay.
My website, which has over a decade of free comics, you can read many free comics on my website, is picturesforstories.com. And I need to follow through on my Big Cartel site so that you can buy my comics.
Please do that so that I can pick them up too, because I want to check out any other books that I can get from you.
Within the month, I will get it up and running, I hope.
All right, sounds good, dude. Well,
cool.
Thank you for taking time to chat with me, dude. I had a blast talking comics with you, and I can't wait to do this with you again, dude.
Thanks for getting up early. I appreciate it.